it's me, Sam, and this is by Hook or by Needles, and this is going to be part 2, stage 2, whatever you want to call it, of my beginner's tutorials. I've already made and scheduled for release the beginner's cast-ons 3 ways, and I thought, well, the next logical step is to show you how to actually knit. Now I just need to cast on myself some stitches. So this is just a refresher. This is me, casting on with a long tail cast on. Now, I suggest if you're going, there goes Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you. Just what I needed. Wibbly wobbly camera. So we grab our yarn, finger and thumb separate. So I thought we'll start off with the easiest of the stitches, which is our knit stitch. And I would suggest if you're going to make a scarf, and you would use, whatever yarn you've got, use whatever the recommendation is for the needle size, hook size. Use that and cast on, I would say, I think the general rule, not that there should be any rules with knitting, but the general consensus is a scarf should be around about 8 inches wide, which I think is about 10 or 15 centimeters. Well, I'm not going to do that many stitches, because that'll be about, if you're using a worsted weight weight for Aran weight or 10 ply, which is what I have here, you'd probably be looking at something like, I don't know, anything from 25 to 35 stitches, depending on your idiom of the tension and the exact nature of the weight for or 10 ply. Not all 10 plies are the same, just as not as all DKs are the same. Well, I'm just going to 13, 14. So I'm just showing you quickly again the cast-ons, but there is a video, 3 ways for beginners to cast on, that's already been put up. So, if you've come to this video and you don't know how to cast on, please go and check out that video first. Okay, so if you've cast on from the previous video, this is what you'll have. Excuse me, sorry. This is what you'll have. You'll have your stitches on your needle. You're always needing to have your leading thread on the right hand side of your needle. That's how you can tell where you are. It does change with brioche, but we're not going to go there just yet. So how do we knit? Knitting is very simple, and in fact the second form of cast on is almost like that I showed in the last video, is almost like knitting. It's a very, very similar sort of format. Let's look at our stitches first. So we've got our stitch. We've got a loop on our needle, which you can see here. We have a front leg and a back leg. When you are knitting, you need to put your needle through this front leg, out this hole, in that direction like that, but not from behind. You would do it from here. So you're going in from there and out there. That is how you want to position your needle to start with knitting. If this is going too slow for you, just sort of perhaps speed ahead or whatever. If it's not going slow enough, by all means, slow down the video. Okay, so knitting is just a matter of pushing through that stitch, yarning over from bottom and around, and then we just pull through and we take it off. So in, so you can see how it's positioned, yarn around again, you can see how that's positioned, pull it through and take it off. Yarn over and pull off. Now, one way I found when I was learning, and I still do it to this day to try and keep my tension even, is although my, with this side, I do tend to try and keep my stitches fairly close to the point. You probably don't want to do that when you're learning, because if you haven't got a grippy needle like a wooden needle like this, and if you're using metal or plastic or something a little bit more slippy, you might find you're going to lose stitches off the end. So just, move it back a little bit if if you're a little bit sort of insecure or a bit worried about losing stitches. Now, to keep tension like consistent, I put my needle through, and my needle is just snug. It's not loose, it's not tight. I was able to slide my needle in there without any problems. If you can maintain that, and you put my loop over and pull through. Once again, when I pull through, I haven't pulled all the way through like that and given myself a really big stitch. No, what I do is I just wrap around and I pull through. Try and think of it as trying to have your two needles in not constant contact with each other, but almost constant contact. So like you're pushing through, the needles are touching, okay? The needles are touching. You've made a hole just big enough for the needle. Yarn over. Holding this yarn, I use these two fingers, and I sort of just gently sort of pull just to make sure that makes it a little bit easier to pull the yarn through the hole. And you might find a lot of people push, which I do occasionally, but there's another way of doing it. I'll show you that in a second. Needles are still in contact, so I haven't pulled it way out, and I'm not sort of struggling. There's a bit of, there's a looseness there, but it's not too loose, and I just slide it off. Now, often what I do when I'm knitting, like I say, I'm a thrower. There are Continental tutorials out there. I can try and show you some Continental. It's not great. I'll do this row first, this way, and then I'll show you the premise of Continental. So, alternatively, because sometimes people complain they'll get a sore finger, especially if the needle is particularly pointy. Sometimes what I will do is I'll just put my needle in, yarn around, and rather than push, I just pull. I just pull on that needle like that, and pull it back, and it's still in contact with the other needle until I pull off the stitch. So I push through, yarn over, and I pull back. And you can, and that's where you get that clickety-clack sound, is because, your needles really need to be in contact with each other to make sure you get consistent loop sizing, I find. And that's the way I always have knitted, and I've never had too much trouble with tension. So just keep going, push through, and usually you'll find the first row may be the hardest, depending on how tightly or loosely you have cast on. If you come to find that when you come to do your first row knitting, you are really, really struggling to get that needle in, then I would unravel and I would go up a needle size, just half a needle size or a full needle size. Cast on again, and then get rid of one of those needles, okay, and go back to the smaller needle in your right hand so that it slides easier into the gap, so that you're not going to have sort of, you're not going to be fighting the wool or the stitches. So I'm getting caught up on my woolen blanket I've got over me because it's still a bit chilly here in Melbourne, but it is 1:45 in the morning. So okay, so we've done our first stitch, yay. And you can see there's a little V forming just there. You're not going to see that because we're knitting both sides or both directions, so you're going to get this little bump, and that's called the purl bump. Even though you're not actually purling, by knitting you create a purl bump on the opposite side. So this is a knit side, and you can see that it's a knit side because you can see that little V just there. Let me see if I can point it out a little bit better. Hang on. It's a little V. Little V. That lets you know that that's the knit side. I just done knit side. And the bumps is your purl side. But we're going to be doing what is called garter stitch, which is knitting every row. I'll do a tutorial another time for the purl stitch. A lot of people have trouble with the purl stitch. They find it uncomfortable to work. Okay, if I am a continental knitter, which I am not, I'm really not. I cannot do it to save my life, but I'm going to try just to show people that it can be done. So you still go through the needle from front to back on that first leg. And then what continental needles do is they pick. They're called pickers because they pick at the stitch and they slide it off. So they go in and they, I keep getting caught up on my blanket. And see how I'm finding it very awkward because I'm just not used to doing it. But you pick up that stitch, and I find it makes your tension, in my opinion, too tight. I'm too tight of a continental knitter because I just don't do it enough. I think if I were to persist, I could get better, but it is also meant to be the faster way of knitting. Okay, so the idea with continental is you wrap it around your pinky. Normally you would do what I call the crochet hold. You would just do that, and that's just your normal yarn hold, and your crochet hold if you're a crocheter. With continental, it's worthwhile wrapping your finger, the yarn around your pinky once, because of tension, and then I often have to get it right, because you want this yarn against your finger, not tightly, but tight enough so that when you go in, you just have to hook it up and then pull it through. Okay, this is Continental knitting. So, and like I say, it is supposed to be quicker, and certainly if you look on the internet for fast Continental knitters, you will see some really, really fast people knitting. But that being said, there's no reason why you can't get similar speeds doing what they call English knitting, which is called throwing, or there is another word and I can't think of it right now. So through that first leg, we want to pick up our yarn and we want to bring it through, push down. Now you've got to push down, and the reason I'll tell you is, once again, it's a tension thing. If you just get the stitch and pick it up like that and then go like that, you're going to have a very, very tight stitch. But if you push it all the way down straight away, it's going to be as big as the needle. And that's the whole point of gauge and having specific yarn, needle sizes for specific yarns, is you want the loops to all be a specific size so that the yarn can be do its work, do what it's supposed to do. Whether if it's a variegated, you want it to look good. If it's a solid color, you want it, you want to be able to see the stitch definition and that sort of thing. But yeah, so this is Continental. I'll do a row of this, and as you can see, I feel like a chicken. My little elbows come up and down when I try Continental, but it is, it's an alternative way of knitting. And if you are already a beginner who throws and you want to do Continental, my suggestion would be to hold the yarn in your left hand as though you were crocheting, if you're a crocheter, and just start every row doing perhaps, see, I have trouble picking it up and bringing it through, just do half a row or half a dozen stitches as Continental, and then go back to throwing for the rest of the thing. You might end up with uneven tension, but it is a way for you to gradually get that muscle memory going on how to do Continental. So we go through, we pick up the yarn, and we bring it through like that. It is a smoother motion, as you can see. You do not have to, at any point, take your hands off the needles, because you are constantly just doing a smooth movement. So this is why Continental is so popular. Okay, so we've done, and you'll find, and I will find this quite tight, because I do tight very knitting. No, I knit very tight when I do Continental. So we finished another row, and you will see again, you've got your bumps on the back side, you've got bumps on the front side, but again, if you pull down, you will see that standard V knit stitch, but you can't see it without separating them, because we're doing garter stitch. Now, how do you count garter stitch? I've done 2 rows, and I've got 1, 2, 3 bumps. One bump will always be your cast on, and then you've got one bump is your first stitch, and the bump that's right up against the needle is your second stitch. Some garter stitch patterns may actually even say knit till you have 18 ridges, and this is what they're talking about. That is a ridge. So I'll do a row of what I call normal knitting, my style of knitting. So in again, yarn around, pull through and off. And like I said, this is going to be tight because I did a Continental row around and through. And you see what I mean by taking my hand off the needle. Now, some throwers will, my mother says, you knit in the most awkward way. And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe I do, but I still enjoy it. So whatever way you knit, as long as you're getting the results you want and you're happy with the results you've got and you're, enjoying yourself, don't let anybody else tell you you're knitting wrong. There's two ways of throwing your yarn. You can do what I do and you take your hand off the needle and it's just being held there by pure tension of the stitches, and you can wrap around. Now I'm doing it this way to be very specific and obvious as to what I'm doing, to show you how to knit a knit stitch. But normally if I'm knitting, I might just not exactly take my hand off, but I just slide my hand up and over. So I'm just sliding my hand up and over like that to get the stitch on and around. So it's always up and over when you're doing your knit stitch. Up and over. And you can, as I say, get some good speeds going. Oh, cat hair. No, it doesn't want to come out. Yep. You can get some good speeds by throwing. So if anyone ever tells you, oh, because a lot of people tell me the first thing they do when they see that I'm knitting English style, they will say, you should knit Continental. It's much faster and better. Well, okay. I shouldn't do what you want me to do. I should do what I'm comfortable with, what I know, and all the rest of it. So, never let people tell you you're knitting something wrong. Unless you're dropping stitches and knitting backwards and upside down or something stupid like that. I mean, then you're knitting wrong, but very few of us do that. Okay. I don't know how comfortable you are with what you see yet, whether you feel that you can. I hope most of you are knitting along or trying to knit along, or maybe you're watching for the first time. You want to see the process first, then you want to pick up your needles. That's fine too. Whichever way is the best way for you to learn. Now I will do, Continental again. See, I always find it so weird going into Continental. So we still go through that first stitch. We pick up our yarn, and that's why it's called picking. And with the first stitch, I like to just hold the yarn so I don't lose it and bring it through. And then you can just pick your next stitch. Now some people will do what's called combination knitting. Now there's different ways of understanding what that term means. combination knitting, to my mind, is throwing when you knit, but then doing continental when you purl. And I will show you how to do continental purl. I'll probably have to do a little bit of practice because I haven't done that in such a long time. But there we go, continental knit. In through the front leg. Whoopsie, pick up the yarn and pull through. See, and once again, my tension is very, very tight. See, it's, yeah. And that's just me because I'm just not used to continental. And I do find continental knitting easier than continental purling, but you will find that out next time. Okay. Now you can see how this is progressing. Got 2 ridges there. On the other side, I've got 3 ridges, 1, 2, 3. Remember, the most bottom one, this is the cast on. You can see that from this side, it's cast on, and on the opposite side, that's your cast on bump. And you can tell I've done 4 rows because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bumps in total. I'll just do 1 more row of normal, what I call normal knitting. Cat hairs. Dear, dear, dear. Okay, so once again, another one. Around, pull through. Around, pull through. Slow this down if you need to, or speed it up if you need to. Or go back to the beginning and start again to see once more how to do the knit stitch. Okay, so in this way you can make a very simple, easy scarf. So you would cast on and you just knit every row. Now if you're knitting with a variegated, you will, every row, if you're doing garter stitch, you will notice that part of the stitch is one colour and part of the stitch is sort of another. And you will get that sort of breakthrough colour. Some people like that look, some people don't. It's entirely up to you. If you do knitting, the colour change is cleaner. But there you go. So give that a go. And next week we'll go on to purling and combining knitting and purling in a scarf format again, because scarves are nice and straight, they're easy, and there's something that we can all use and wear. So that's your lot for today, or for this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask away. So I'll just say all that's left is to say goodbye. So till next time, bye for now.